Hello everyone, welcome to Bajirao IAS Academy current affairs analysis session. In the previous sessions, we have discussed some important current affairs for your upcoming state public service commission examinations. So we have discussed polity current affairs and also economic current affairs. And in the upcoming sessions, we'll try to discuss some important current affairs from the environment section also, because environment is also another important area where questions are being asked, right? So before discussing this, so I hope the fundamentals of environment is very clear for you. So even if they are not clear, so I'll try to explain those things as well, because you'll develop a clear picture and you'll also develop an overall understanding of these current affairs, right? So one by one we'll try to discuss all these important current affairs topics, and they are in news recent times and they're very important, and there's also high probability that these questions are being asked in your examination, right? Because in recent times the importance for the environment section has been increasing a lot. So keeping this in mind, so we'll try to discuss everything, and the first topic is 50 years of Project Tiger. So Project Tiger is a project that has been launched for the conservation and protection of tiger population. So if you look at some data with respect to tiger numbers across the world, India is a country with a huge number of, or largest number of tigers, right? So India is home to the largest number of tigers in the world. So in order to make sure that India maintains this numbers of tigers, a union government has launched a project called Project Tiger. So we'll try to understand about this project. So I'm time and again repeating that the union government projects or programs are two types. One is a centrally sponsored scheme and the other is central sector scheme, right? So funding would be varies between central sector schemes and centrally sponsored schemes. Now when we talk about the Project Tiger, it is a centrally sponsored scheme, right? So I would also explain both the centrally sponsored scheme and central sector schemes in some detail, right? Because there's also a probability that whether the scheme is a centrally sponsored scheme or central sector scheme, that can also be asked in your exam. But so when we talk about a Project Tiger or any other environment related projects, so one ministry which is considered as nodal ministry, that is Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. And in which year Project Tiger was started? It was started in the year 1973. And you might have known about a legislation called the Wildlife Protection Act 1972. So exactly after 1 year of the Wildlife Protection Act, Project Tiger was started in the year 1973. So you just have to remember this. Okay, so we knew that Wildlife Protection Act. So this Wildlife Protection Act was passed in the year 1972, and after the Wildlife Protection Act, Project Tiger was started in the year 1973. So you just remember this. Okay, so initially when Project Tiger was launched in India, there are 9 tiger reserves. Okay, so in different states or in different parts of India, there are 9 tiger reserves when the Project Tiger was launched. Now remember, I've already emphasized on the importance or the objective of launching Project Tiger to ensure a maintenance of a viable population of tigers in India for scientific, economic, aesthetic, cultural and ecological reasons. And which is the implementing agency of the Project Tiger? National Tiger Conservation Authority. So National Tiger Conservation Authority is a nodal agency for the implementation of Project Tiger. And also remember that the National Tiger Conservation Authority is a statutory body, right? So it is a statutory body or a statutory agency. And so if you look at the tiger status, so International Union for the Conservation of Nature categorizes this as endangered species, right? Tiger is an endangered species. right? So this is what International Union for Conservation of Nature's red list talks about. And apart from that, there's also another convention on international trade in endangered species, CITES convention, right? So in this convention, tiger is listed as part of appendix 1. That means it enjoys highest protection under this particular international convention. And apart from that, Wildlife Protection Act of 1972 consider tiger as part of schedule 1. So that means it enjoys highest level of protection in India. So you can also see some details with respect to the project tiger here. Okay, so funding, as we have already discussed, that this is a centrally sponsored scheme, right? So this is a centrally sponsored scheme, and in fact, so 70% of the world tigers living in India, right? So for example, if 100 tigers are living in the world, near about 70 tigers are living in India itself. Now some details with respect to tiger reserves. So Project Tiger was launched by the Indira Gandhi government, right? So which government was launched? So it was launched by the Indira Gandhi government in the year 1973. And this Project Tiger was launched from a national park in Uttarakhand, that is Jim Corbett National Park. Jim Corbett National Park, right? So you just have to remember that Project Tiger has been launched from the Jim Corbett National Park by the Indira Gandhi government in the year 1973. Now when we talk about the tiger reserves, it consists of a core area, which is very sensitive area, and after the core area there is also a buffer area, right? So core areas have a legal status of national park or a sanctuary, and tiger reserves are constituted on core and buffer strategy, right? So they are essentially built on core and buffer strategy. So when we talk about the core and buffer strategy, core area is a very sensitive area of a tiger reserve, and surrounding core area there is also a buffer area. And as of now, there are around 53 tiger reserves in India. 53 tiger reserves are existing in India, and poaching is the main threat that the tigers have been facing. And we have already discussed that Indian Wildlife Protection Act, tiger is part of Schedule 1. That means it enjoys highest level of protection, and International Union for Conservation of Nature's red list categorized tiger as endangered species, and Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species categorized this as part of Appendix 1. Okay, so these are some details, and apart from that, there are some tiger reserves which are being given across different parts of India. So you can actually go through all these details. So as we have discussed that there are around 53 tiger reserves in India, so you can go through all these tiger reserves. Okay, and next, Kuno National Park. So Kuno Palpur National Park is well known for Kuno Palpur National Park. So this national park is in news because of some reasons. So why? Because a cheetah reintroduction program or project Cheetah, right? Cheetah reintroduction program. Now we all knew that cheetah is a top predator in a tropic level, in a food chain. We can say that cheetah is a top level predator, right? So apart from that, this Kuno National Park is located in Madhya Pradesh, right? So it is located in the state of Madhya Pradesh. So however, when we talk about cheetahs, right, particularly Asiatic cheetahs, Now in India, Asiatic cheetahs went extinct in the year 1950s itself. So India has declared that Asiatic cheetahs went extinct in India. So the reason was hunting and poaching, right? So before India's independence, extreme hunting and poaching has led to the extinction of Asiatic cheetahs from India. So since then, India has been making efforts to bring Asiatic cheetahs from other countries so that we could have a viable population of cheetahs. Now, in any ecosystem, diversity of species diversity, species richness is very, very important, right? So in order to do so, India already made efforts to bring Asiatic cheetahs. Now when we talk about Asiatic cheetahs, Iran is the only country with the Asiatic cheetahs population, but the population of Asiatic cheetahs in Iran is also considerably less. A very, very less number of Asiatic cheetahs are present in Iran, right? So even though India asked Iran to support its cheetah reintroduction program, but Iran refused to do so, right? And the other thing that we need to understand, Asiatic cheetahs are critically endangered species. They are critically endangered as per IUCN Red List, International Union for Conservation of Nature Red List. Asiatic cheetahs are critically endangered animals, and across the world, Iran is the only country with the Asiatic cheetah population. So since Iran refused to provide India with Asiatic cheetahs, India planned to introduce African cheetahs into Indian forests, right? So African cheetahs. So as part of this cheetah reintroduction program, India already talked to both South Africa and Namibia, right? So talked to both Namibia and South Africa, and these two countries provided India with African cheetahs, right? So as part of the cheetah reintroduction program, India will gradually introduce cheetahs into Indian forests in a phased manner so that we could have the viable cheetah population, right? So however, it is not easy because it is world's first international translocation program of cheetahs. Okay, so first international translocation project of cheetahs, and it is not very easy to translocate tigers from one continent to another continent where the environmental conditions are completely different. But in India, there's only one single national park which has the climate conditions similar to the African continent. So that national park is Kuno National Park. So even if we introduce African cheetahs into this Kuno National Park, there is a higher possibility of survival of those cheetah population. So once the cheetah population survived in these Kuno National Park, so gradually we will also introduce cheetahs into other suitable forests, other suitable national parks and wildlife sanctuaries in India, so thereby ultimately having a viable cheetah population in India as a top level predator and a very important species in the overall food chain and food web. So I hope you have understood the background information of this cheetah reintroduction program and why this Kuno National Park is important here. Okay, so now understand the other thing is that a Kuno National Park, I've told you that this is located in the state of Madhya Pradesh. Kuno National Park is located in the state of Madhya Pradesh and is a part of Central Indian Vindhyan Hills. So we knew that Vindhyas and Satpuras are mountain ranges located in the state of Madhya Pradesh. So therefore the Kuno National Park is located in the Madhya Pradesh, in the state of Madhya Pradesh. And recently a Namibian cheetah translocated to Kuno National Park under Project Cheetah, and it recently gave birth to 4 new cubs. right? So that is the news, and because of that reason Kuno National Park is recently in news. But it is in news primarily because of this cheetah reintroduction program, and cheetahs which were brought from Africa were introduced into the Kuno National Park. Now so far 20 cheetahs were brought from both South Africa and Namibia. So how many cheetahs were brought from Namibia? 8 cheetahs, and South Africa has given us 12 cheetahs, and total 20 cheetahs. And these 20 cheetahs were introduced in the Kuno National Park of Madhya Pradesh. Okay, so they were brought from African continent and they are introduced in the Kuno National Park of Madhya Pradesh. And in fact, the carrying capacity of Kuno National Park is 21 cheetahs. Now what is the carrying capacity? Now carrying capacity means the total population that this national park can successfully sustain, right? So more number of cheetahs, so that means cheetahs will feed on the lower level animals in a food chain, right? So lower trophic levels animals in a food chain. So if cheetah population increases, there wouldn't be adequate prey for these predators, right? So 21 is a sustainable population of cheetahs that Kuno National Park can support, and that is the carrying capacity of the Kuno National Park. And the long-term population size that is expected is 50 plus. And in fact there are also other similar relocation programs. South Africa to Malawi and Mozambique were previously done, and in fact the African cheetahs or cheetahs, once they are introduced into the Indian ecosystem, so they could share the space with the Asiatic lions as well. And in fact in Kuno National Park there are some leopard population also. So these cheetahs could face some threats from the leopard population, already existing leopard population. So some facts with respect to cheetah. So it is oldest big cat species, and its ancestors can be traced back about 8.5 million years. A number of cheetahs just under 7,500 individuals only. Remember that I've already told you that in India Asiatic cheetah population went extinct, and Iran is the only country with Asiatic cheetah population, and Asiatic cheetah is categorized as a critically endangered animal. Okay, so it is a critically endangered animal of IUCN Red List. However, IUCN Red List recognizes cheetahs as vulnerable species. We can say African cheetahs a vulnerable species, but Asiatic cheetahs are critically endangered species, so you should understand the difference. And in fact cheetahs so far lost 90% of their global habitat. So they lost the global habitat primarily because of the human activities such as deforestation, climate change, and biodiversity loss. So all these factors are the reason for 90% loss of global habitat for the cheetahs. And there are some differences that you should make note of between African cheetah and Asiatic cheetah. Now what is the IUCN status of African cheetah? It is vulnerable, right? So it is vulnerable. And what is the IUCN status of Asiatic cheetah? It is critically endangered species. And so far around 6,500 to 7,000 African cheetahs present in the world. But however, when we talk about the Asiatic cheetahs, less than 100 species of less than 100 Asiatic cheetahs are surviving, and they only found in Iran, right? So Asiatic cheetahs are only found in Iran. You should remember this. And some physical features of African cheetah and Asiatic cheetah. So African cheetah is bigger in size as compared to Asiatic cheetah. However, now Asiatic cheetah is a smaller and it is paler in color, and it has more fur and a smaller head and a longer neck, usually have red eyes. So these are some differences between the African cheetah and Asiatic cheetah. So we just understood that African cheetah is vulnerable, Asiatic cheetah is critically endangered, and Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species categorized cheetah a species which is part of Appendix 1. Okay. And so the cheetah reintroduction program into the Kuno Palpur National Park aims to bring the African cheetahs to India. So far 20 cheetahs were brought to India from both Namibia and South Africa, and in India it is declared that cheetah population went extinct in the year 1952. The government of India declared that cheetah population went extinct in the year 1952. Right? So you just have to remember this as well with respect to cheetah population. So next is Kuril Islands. Right, so we'll try to understand about Kuril Islands, because there may be question that Kuril Islands belong to which country and Kuril Islands are located in the which ocean. So such questions are being asked, and Kuril Islands are dispute between which of the following countries. So this is very, very important, so that you cannot afford to neglect this. So in recent times, an earthquake with a magnitude of 6.3 on the Richter scale was occurred in Kuril Islands. Right? So earthquake with a magnitude of 6.3 takes place or occurred in Kuril Islands of Japan, and because of that particular reason, so it is in news. Now when we talk about the location of these Kuril Islands, so Kuril Island is an archipelago that extends from Kamchatka Peninsula in Russia to Hokkaido Island in Japan. Right? So you can see here, this is Hokkaido Island and this is Hokkaido Island of Japan. Right? So apart from that, there is a Kamchatka Peninsula. So this Kamchatka Peninsula belongs to Russia. Right? Kamchatka Peninsula, and this is Pacific Ocean. Now if you can look at this northern Pacific area, so you can clearly see the Kamchatka Peninsula, and this peninsula belong to Russia, and there is also Hokkaido Island, and this Hokkaido Island belongs to Japan. And these Kuril Islands are located between the Hokkaido Island and the Kamchatka Peninsula. Right? So these islands are known as the Kuril Islands, and they are located between Sea of Okhotsk and Pacific Ocean. So this is Sea of Okhotsk and Pacific Ocean. So it separates, the Kuril Islands separates Sea of Okhotsk and Pacific Ocean. This is Pacific Ocean and Sea of Okhotsk. And in fact, many of islands are geologically active. So geologically active in the sense that, so volcanic activity regularly takes place in Kuril Islands. Right? So there are a lot of active volcanoes are located in the Kuril Islands, and in fact both Russia and Japan assert sovereignty over these Kuril Islands, and sometimes Russia says that these Kuril Islands belong to us, and Japan says that no, Kuril Islands belongs to Japan. So therefore there's a conflict between Japan and Russia about these Kuril Islands, because both assert the sovereignty over 4 islands referred to as northern territories of Japan and South Kurils in Russia. So in Russia they are known as South Kurils, and in Japan they are known as northern territories. So I hope you have understood. The reason for Kuril Islands to be in news is because of 6.3 magnitude earthquake, and apart from that, so these Kuril Islands they're located north of Japan between Hokkaido Island of Japan and Kamchatka Peninsula of Russia, and these Kuril Islands separates Sea of Okhotsk with Pacific Ocean, and most of the Kuril Islands are volcanically active islands, and in fact there is a dispute between Russia and Japan over these Kuril Islands, because Japan claims that these Kuril Islands are northern territories of Japan. On the other hand, Russia says that these Kuril Islands are South Kurils, which are part of Russia. And next topic is a Vulture restaurant. So recently Vulture restaurant is being established in the state of Jharkhand. So we'll try to understand about this Vulture restaurant as well. So Vulture restaurant was set up in Jharkhand with the aim and objective to conserve critically endangered species. Now a vulture is a critically endangered species, right? So you have to remember this. So vulture is a critically endangered species. Now, why in recent times vulture population has been declining at a faster rate? So there is one reason. Now, vulture population very often feed upon the dead animals, right? Dead animals. Or particularly we can see dead cattle. Now in the dairy farming sector, an anti-inflammatory drug called diclofenac. So and diclofenac is an anti-inflammatory drug, so which is being used in the cattle population, particularly in dairy sector, right? So once cattle die, these vultures feed on the cattle population, so dead cattle, and because of traces of diclofenac on the dead cattle, so it leads to the death of vultures, right? So once vultures consume the dead cattle which has the traces of diclofenac, and this diclofenac causes a lot of harm to the vulture population. Okay, so it leads to the failure of the liver of among these vultures, and over a period of time it leads to the death of vultures. However, it is in news because recently a vulture restaurant was set up in Jharkhand to conserve critically endangered species. So in fact, the vulture restaurant is established in Koderma district of Jharkhand, so to address impact of livestock drugs, particularly diclofenac on vultures. Remember, I've told you that diclofenac, which is responsible for the large mortality of the vulture population. And diclofenac is anti-inflammatory drug. Okay, so this diclofenac is used in veterinary practices, veterinary, dairy farming, in all those things. This diclofenac is extensively used. However, so this diclofenac very often toxic to the vultures and other birds which prey on the dead cattle, right? So dead cattle with the diclofenac traces is toxic to the vulture population and other birds of prey, and that's why the vulture population has been declining at a very fast pace. So in order to conserve a vulture population, in order to protect vultures, a vulture restaurant is recently set up in Jharkhand. And in fact, so one thing that you need to remember, that vulture population is a very, very important, because they eat the dead organic matter, or they consume the dead animals, thereby preventing the spread of diseases from those dead animals, right? So that's why vulture are very, very important. And in overall food chain, food cycle, vultures play a very, very important role. So far 9 species of vultures are found in India. How many species of vultures are found in India? So 9 species of vulture found in India, and out of them 3 species are known as migratory species. So migratory species in the sense that we cannot see those vultures permanently in India. So they migrate from one place to another place. So out of 9 vultures which are found in India, so 3 vultures are migratory in nature. So they are Cinereous vulture, Griffon vulture, and Himalayan vulture. And in fact, so we have the Wildlife Protection Act 1972 to protect animals which have been various threats, and Wildlife Protection Act 1972 accorded highest protection to the vultures by including them under the Schedule 1. Remember that the Schedule 1 animals enjoy highest legal protection. And in fact, so there are some reasons which are the leading causes for the declining vulture population. One is the the veterinary practice of using diclofenac to treat various diseases in animals, and that leads to the death of the vulture population. And loss of habitat of vulture population, particularly due to human activities, food scarcity, population decline due to exposure to drug diclofenac, and even electrocution by the power lines is also another factor which is killing the vulture population. As I have already explained that 9 species of vulture found in India, and you can also go through all these 9 different species of vulture population. And apart from that, 4 vulture species are critically endangered, and 1 species is endangered, 3 are near threatened in these 9 different species of vultures. And in fact, the crisis is that there is a massive dip or decrease in the vulture population, and that came to light in the decade of 1990s. Okay, so the main cause or the main reason for a significant decline in the vulture population is because of diclofenac. So diclofenac, a veterinary non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug, right? So these drugs are mostly responsible for the decline of the vulture population in India, and that is the reason now most of the vulture population are categorized as critically endangered species, and they are also facing the threat of extinction. So next is a Tibetan brown bear, right? So we'll try to understand a few aspects with respect to Tibetan brown bear. So India recently recorded its first ever confirmed sighting of rare Tibetan brown bear, right? So you just have to focus on this. It is very, very important because this is the first ever confirmed sighting of rare Tibetan brown bear. So where it was recently found? It was recently found in the state of Sikkim, and it is India's first recorded confirmed sighting of rare Tibetan brown bear, right? So in fact, its scientific name Ursus arctos proniosus. Okay, so this is its scientific name, and this rare Tibetan brown bear, which is recently found in Sikkim, is also known as Tibetan blue bear. And in fact, it is an omnivore species. I hope you knew what is omnivore, carnivore, and herbivore. So omnivore species are species, so they eat and survive on both plant and animal matter, right? So they eat both plant matter as well as animal matter, and these species are known as omnivore species. And in fact, the Tibetan brown bear mainly found in Nepal, Bhutan, and the Tibetan Plateau. And when we talk about the protection under the Wildlife Protection Act to the Tibetan brown bear, so again this accorded the highest legal protection by including this in Schedule 1. And apart from that, Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species accorded Appendix 1 status, I mean again highest protection at the international level to rare Tibetan brown bear, right? So Wildlife Protection Act, Schedule 1, Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species, Appendix 1, and it is mainly found in Nepal, Bhutan and Tibetan Plateau, and India's first ever recorded sighting of a rare Tibetan brown bear in the state of Sikkim. So that's what you should remember this. And next, so Humboldt's Enigma. So we'll try to understand what exactly is Humboldt's Enigma. Right. So recently this Humboldt's Enigma is seen in news. Okay. So it is in news because it was proposed by Alexander von Humboldt. So Alexander von Humboldt stated that mountain regions generally display higher diversity than the tropical regions. So generally we have the idea that tropic areas have highest levels of diversity, right? So highest level of diversity, right? So what are the tropic areas? So the areas between the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn are known as the tropic areas, and in fact tropic areas receive highest rainfall and highest sunlight, and the conditions, the environmental conditions suitable for the large scale growth of both flora and fauna, and that's why it is generally believed that these tropics have a huge diversity. They have a rich diversity of species, both flora and fauna. But Alexander von Humboldt discovered that the mountain regions beyond the tropics display higher diversity than the tropical areas, right? So this is what he has said, and that is known as Humboldt's Enigma. Okay, so generally the conventional belief is that the tropic areas show or they display the highest levels of diversity, species richness. But according to Alexander von Humboldt, so his Humboldt's Enigma theory, the mountain regions generally display higher levels of diversity than the tropic areas. So this is what he said. Okay, so mountain regions, trophics, right? So in terms of species richness or species diversity, mountain regions display higher diversity than the tropics. So while the conventional belief is that world's tropical areas have a greater productivity and high levels of diversity, so the proponents of Humboldt's Enigma hold that many areas outside the tropics are also highly biodiverse. So beyond or outside the tropics, there are different areas. They are also diverse in nature, and in fact scientists have also found that the more heterogeneous the geological composition of mountain is, more biodiverse they are. Okay, so in case if there is any mountain that is beyond the tropics, it is heterogeneous in terms of its geological composition, and it shows highest levels of biodiversity, and that is what the Humboldt's Enigma has been talking about. So recently Global Risk Report of 2022 has been released. Now one thing that you need to remember about the Global Risk Report, this is released by World Economic Forum. So World Economic Forum releases the Global Risk Report 2024, and the other thing that you need to remember that this Global Risk Report is released by the World Economic Forum almost every year. So this is what you should remember, and going ahead we will also have a session on indexes and reports which are being released by different organizations and agencies, but Global Risk Report is released by the World Economic Forum. So don't confuse with International Monetary Fund, World Bank and World Economic Forum. So because each of these organizations publish different reports and different indexes, and in fact So the Global Risk Report has also pointed out India's top 5 risks. They are misinformation and disinformation, infectious diseases, illicit economic activity, inequalities, and even labor shortages. So these are the global risk, these are the 5 risks that India will face as being identified by the Global Risk Report. Okay, so it has also identified global short-term risks as well as global long-term risks as well. So you can go through it, but it is not important. You just have to remember that Global Risk Report is released by the World Economic Forum. And next topic is 5 years of National Clean Air Program. Okay, so National Clean Air Program recently completed 5 years. Now we'll try to understand what is this National Clean Air Program and what is the objective of launching National Clean Air Program. Now when we talk about this National Clean Air Program, air pollution, all those things, recently Ministry of Environment, Forests and Climate Change has launched the National Clean Air Program in the year 2019. Okay, so in which year National Clean Air Program is launched? It is launched in the year 2019 in the backdrop of increasing levels of pollution in the country. Okay, so in recent times, due to a number of reasons, pollution levels have been increasing enormously, right? So for example, what reasons you can write when we talk about increasing levels of pollution? For example, vehicular emissions, industrial emissions, and construction activities, recent stubble burning, and open landfill sites, and just burning of these open landfill sites. So all these factors can be part of can increase air pollution levels in India. Okay, so this National Clean Air Program was launched in the year 2019 in the backdrop of rising air pollution in the country. So the objective of National Clean Air Program is to improve air quality in 131 cities, right? So it planned to improve air quality in 131 cities and non-attainment cities and million plus cities. So among these 131 cities, some cities are non-attainment cities and some cities are million plus cities, and 24 states engaged by all stakeholders, right? So the objective of National Clean Air Program is to reduce 40% of the particulate matter, because PM 2.5, particulate matter 2.5 and particulate matter 10 are also the major pollutants. So the objective of National Clean Air Program is to reduce 40% of PM 2.5 and PM 10 concentrations by the year 2025, and the base year is 2017. So you should also remember this because it is very important. And the implementation agency of the National Clean Air Program is Central Pollution Control Board. Okay, so there is a legislation which is a Water Prevention and Control of Pollution Act, which is passed in the year 1974, and this legislation has created Central Pollution Control Board and State Pollution Control Board, and they are the statutory bodies. And National Clean Air Program would be implemented by the Central Pollution Control Board at the national level and under the City Action Plan. So they are being implemented by the state government and its agencies at the state level and city level with respect to the municipal bodies. So one thing that you need to remember about the National Clean Air Program, so it is launched by Ministry of Environment, Forests and Climate Change, and it was launched in the year 2019. And in fact, so the objective of National Clean Air Program is to reduce 40% of the particulate matter by 25-26 with the base year of 2017, and implementing agency is Central Pollution Control Board. So next is Green Fuels Alliance India. So we'll try to understand what exactly is Green Fuel Alliance India. So Denmark recently announces Green Fuel Alliance India initiative. Okay, so which country announced this? Denmark has announced this. Denmark recently announced Green Fuels Alliance India initiative. And in fact, so this is a strategic partnership, green strategic partnership. So this green strategic partnership was signed between India and Denmark in the year 2020. Right, so 2020 green strategic partnership signed between India and Denmark. And apart from that, the primary objective of the Green Fuel Alliance India launched by Denmark is to promote sustainable energy growth in India. Now remember that as of now, more than 50% of energy is generated from the thermal power plants using coal as a raw material, and we knew that coal is a fossil fuel, and when we burn coal it releases carbon into the atmosphere, and carbon is a greenhouse gas. It results in global warming and then climate change. So therefore we have been looking to make a gradual transition from the coal based or fossil fuel based economy to green economy. So in order to do so, we have been inking the agreements and partnerships with the like-minded countries like Denmark, Germany, Finland, all those countries, to make sure that we have the faster transition towards the green economy. Right, so the objective of Green Fuels Alliance India to promote sustainable energy growth in India by encouraging collaboration among business groups, government entities, research institutions from both of these countries. And in fact, the Green Fuels India Alliance is inspired by initiatives like India-Denmark Energy Partnership and joint research and development efforts on green fuels. Okay, so these are a few things. So which country recently launched or announced the Green Fuels Alliance India? It is Denmark, and it is part of Green Strategic Partnership 2020 between India and Denmark. And in fact, it is inspired by initiatives like India-Denmark Energy Partnership and joint R&D efforts for green fuels. Now, what are the green fuels? For example, green hydrogen. So green hydrogen is a green fuel, and apart from green hydrogen, there are some renewable form of energy, wind energy, solar energy. So all these different forms of energy or fuels are green fuels, right? And there are some other similar initiatives by India with other countries also. For example, with US, we have US-India Strategic Clean Energy Partnership, right? So apart from that, there is a memorandum of understanding on green or clean hydrogen between India and Saudi Arabia, and India-Australia Green Hydrogen Task Force, Global Biofuel Alliance, where India is also a member. So it is forged by Brazil, India and United States. So please remember that Global Biofuel Alliance is an alliance of different countries which focuses on production, generation, R&D of the biofuels, and India is also part of the Global Biofuel Alliance and Quad Grouping's Climate Working Group for Clean Energy. Now, what is Quad? A quadrilateral security dialogue. In this quad grouping, US, India, Australia and Japan are the member countries, and quad grouping has also established climate working group for clean energy. So these are some initiatives by India with other countries which specifically focuses on green and sustainable fuels, and that would further help India make a rapid transition towards the green fuels. And the next topic is Megalosaurus. So it is with respect to the dinosaurs. So we'll try to understand what is this Megalosaurus and why it is in news. So the year 2024 marks the bicentennial, so which is also known as 200th year of the first scientific naming of a dinosaur, the Megalosaurus. So meaning great lizard. Okay, so this is the this 200th anniversary is the first scientific naming of dinosaurs, Megalosaurus, that means the great lizard. Okay, so we could say that 1824 maybe, right? So 1824 is the first scientific naming of the dinosaurus Megalosaurus. And in fact, these are carnivorous dinosaurs species. Now, what is a carnivorous species? I hope you know about the carnivorous species. So they eat only, animals, not plants, but only animals. But human beings are omnivorous species because they eat both animals and also plants as well. So these are carnivorous dinosaur fossils. So they were first discovered in Oxfordshire, England, UK. Okay. And apart from that, the dinosaurs are a diverse group of reptiles of clade Dinosauria. And apart from that, when we talk about the dinosaurs, particularly the Megalosaurus, so they belong to the Mesozoic era. So Mesozoic era spans from 252 to 66 million years ago. Please remember that these questions are the favorite questions. These are some favorite topics. So there may be a question that which year is being celebrated as a bicentennial year for the first scientific naming of a dinosaur? Now, what is Megalosaurus? And even in fact, dinosaurs or Megalosaurus belongs to which era? So they belong to the Mesozoic era. So that spans from 252 to 66 million years ago. So that includes 3 consecutive geological periods: Triassic, Jurassic, and Cretaceous periods. And they are believed to be the ancestors of the present day modern birds, the Megalosaurus dinosaur species. So these things that you should definitely remember. And next one is Prithvi Vigyan scheme. So we'll understand what is this Prithvi Vigyan scheme, right? So recently Union Cabinet has approved an overarching scheme, that is Prithvi Vigyan, and it is approved by the Ministry of Earth Sciences. Okay, so we'll understand the components and objectives of this Prithvi Vigyan scheme, but it is launched by the Ministry of Earth Sciences, right? So Prithvi Vigyan scheme nodal ministry is Ministry of Earth Sciences, and it is launched with the period from 2021 to 26 with the overall cost of 4,797 crore. And in fact, this Prithvi Vigyan scheme encompasses 5 ongoing sub schemes. What are those 5 ongoing sub schemes? So across, that means atmospheric and climate research modeling observing systems and services. OSMART, that is ocean services modeling application resource technology. PACER, polar science and cryosphere research. SAGE, seismology and geosciences. Reach Out, research, education, training and outreach. Now, so how many components that Prithvi Vigyan scheme encompasses? 5 components, and the tenure of Prithvi Vigyan scheme is from 2021 to 26, and the nodal ministry is Ministry of Earth Sciences, right? So now, what are the major objectives of this Prithvi Vigyan scheme? So the objectives including the long-term observation of the atmosphere, ocean, geosphere, cryosphere and solid earth, right? So therefore we could observe the earth. We could also make important predictions with respect to the climate change. And apart from that, this Prithvi Vigyan scheme will also be helpful in the development of models for understanding and even predicting weather, ocean, climate hazards, which are primarily driven by the climate change. And in recent times, the intensity and the frequency of these events have increased. And apart from that, exploration of polar and high seas regions for the discovery of new phenomena and also resources, development of technology for the exploration, sustainable harnessing of ocean resources. So these are some of the benefits or major objectives of this Prithvi Vigyan scheme. Okay, so next, Swachh Survekshan Awards of 2023 that recently the government has announced, right? So when we talk about the Swachh Survekshan Awards, so it is a survey which is conducted on cleanliness, hygiene, sanitation in cities, towns across India. Okay, so Swachh Survekshan survey and Swachh Survekshan awards are part of the Swachh Bharat mission. So we all knew that the Swachh Bharat mission, SBM, was launched in the year 2016 for promoting sanitation, hygiene, public health, and make it a Jan Andolan. Okay, so Swachh Bharat mission was launched in which year? It was launched in the year 2016 to essentially emphasize on cleanliness, hygiene, sanitation in urban areas and rural areas as well. So two components of Swachh Bharat mission, SBM urban and SBM rural. So institutions which are involved in giving this Swachh Survekshan awards or Swachh Survekshan survey, it is conducted every year by the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs in these urban areas. Now what is the objective? Now see, one thing that you need to remember, that Swachh Bharat mission was launched in which year? It was launched in the year 2016. The institution involved in conducting Swachh Survekshan survey, it is conducted every year by the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs. The objective is to encourage large-scale citizen participation, create awareness about the importance of making towns and cities a better place to live. And in fact, it was conducted in 4 phases, the Swachh Survekshan survey, for the first time in 4,477 cities, and total marks under this Swachh Survekshan survey have increased to 9,500 from earlier 7,500. So you just have to remember this. And next one is the Water Prevention Control of Pollution Amendment Act of 2024. So recently Parliament has passed Water Prevention Control of Pollution Amendment Act 2024. And when we talk about the water, so water is a state subject. So we have the union list, state list, and the concurrent list. There are 3 lists in the 7th schedule of the Indian Constitution, and water is a state subject. That means state legislature is empowered to make a legislation on the water, right? So therefore you just remember this, water is a state subject, and the optimal utilization and management of water lies predominantly within the domain of the states as well. However, Article 252 of the Indian Constitution empowered the Parliament to legislate on any matters with respect to water, right? So in fact, Parliament can make laws on water. And in fact, the Water Prevention and Control of Pollution Act 1974, remember that previously we have just discussed that Central Pollution Control Board and State Pollution Control Boards are being established by the Water Prevention and Control of Pollution Act of 1974. And this legislation provides for the prevention and control of water pollution and also maintaining and restoring of the wholeness of the water in the country. And in fact, the original Water Prevention and Control of Pollution Act 1974, originally applicable for 25 states, and it was amended twice in the year 1982 and 2003. The regulatory bodies of the Water Prevention and Control of Pollution Act, so it has created Central Pollution Control Boards and State Pollution Control Boards. So this is very, very important, because CPCB is created by the which legislation? This may be asked. And Water Prevention and Control of Pollution Act amended how many times? So that is also very, very important. So far it has amended 2 times, 1982, 2003, and recently there's another amendment in 2024 itself. Okay, so these things that you should remember, and they are very, very important. Next, biodiversity heritage sites. So we'll try to understand what are these biodiversity heritage sites and how they are very, very important. So the biodiversity heritage sites are defined as the areas or the regions that are unique, and they are ecologically fragile, and in fact the ecosystems consisting of terrestrial ecosystem, marine ecosystem, coastal ecosystem, inland ecosystem. So but all these different ecosystems having rich biodiversity comprising of some specific components. And in fact, Section 37 of the Biological Diversity Act, that was passed in the year 2002 to implement the Convention on Biological Diversity at the global level, Indian government has passed Biological Diversity Act of 2002, and under 37 section 37 of the Biological Diversity Act, state government in consultation with the local bodies may notify areas of biodiversity importance as BHS. And in fact, state government in consultation with the central government may frame rules for the management and conservation of the biodiversity heritage sites. And in fact, National Biodiversity Authority, which is created as part of the Biological Diversity Act, is an autonomous and statutory body of the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change, because the National Biodiversity Authority was created by the Biological Diversity Act of 2002. National Biodiversity Authority's headquarters is in Chennai, and it was established in the year 2003 by the central government to implement India's Biological Diversity Act of 2002. Okay, so in fact, the biodiversity heritage site comprises of any one or more of the following components. So what are the components which are part of the biological heritage sites? So richness of wild domesticated species or intraspecific categories of species, and high species endemism, and restricted in geographical distribution to an area or region, and presence of rare and threatened species, keystone species, right? So these are all some of the characteristic features of the biological or biodiversity heritage sites in India. And you can also go through all these biodiversity heritage sites. For example, you belong to the state of Uttar Pradesh. In Uttar Pradesh, there is a gharial rehabilitation center, right? So there is a gharial rehabilitation center in Uttar Pradesh that is a biodiversity heritage site. For suppose if you belong to the state of West Bengal, so there are some biodiversity heritage sites. So you can go through all these different biodiversity heritage sites. There are some states where there are no biodiversity heritage sites as well, right? For example, in Telangana, so Aminpur Lake. So all these are known as the biodiversity heritage sites. So you can pause the video and go through them. And next is a Ramsar Convention. So we'll try to understand what is this Ramsar Convention. So this Ramsar Convention on the protection, conservation, preservation of the wetlands. Okay. So whenever any question is asked about Ramsar Convention, you need to remember one thing. It is about the protection of wetlands across different parts of the world. Okay, so that is Ramsar Convention, and Ramsar is a city in Iran, and this convention was signed in the year 1971 for the protection and conservation of wetlands, right? So Ramsar Convention was adopted in the year 1971, and it is an intergovernmental treaty under UNESCO. Okay, United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization. So Ramsar Convention is an intergovernmental treaty under UNESCO, and Ramsar Convention usually provides a framework for the conservation and wise use of wetlands and their resources, because wetlands are also facing the threat of degradation. So in order to protect, preserve and conserve these wetlands, this Ramsar Convention was brought into effect. And in fact, a wetland must meet at least one of 9 criteria, such as regularly supporting 20,000 or more water birds on that wetland, and also conserving, maintaining the biological diversity of the area. So there are many such criteria to be identified any site as, to be recognized any site as a Ramsar wetland. And in fact, India has also ratified this Ramsar Convention in the year 1982. So it was adopted in 1971, but India signed or ratified this Ramsar Convention in the year 1982. And when we talk about all the wetlands in India, Tamil Nadu has the maximum number of Ramsar sites. So you just have to remember this, because Tamil Nadu has the largest number of Ramsar sites. And in fact, recently new wetlands were also added to this Ramsar site. For example, Aganishini Ishuri, and this is very close to the Arabian Sea in the state of Karnataka, and Magadi Kire Conservation Reserve again in Karnataka, and Anka Samudra Bird Conservation Reserve again in Karnataka, and in Tamil Nadu also Karavai Vetti Bird Sanctuary and Longwood Shola Reserve Forest. So these are new wetlands, but Tamil Nadu has the highest number of wetlands in India, and India ratified the Ramsar Convention in the year 1982, but this convention was adopted in 1971, and it is an intergovernmental treaty by the UNESCO. So you should remember all those things. And most importantly, so a list of wetlands have been given here. So for example, if you belong to the state of Odisha, so you can go through what are the wetlands which are part of Odisha. And if you belong to the state of Andhra Pradesh, so there is only one wetland from the Andhra Pradesh, so that is Kolleru Lake. So you can go through all these wetlands across different parts of India. And next one is methane emission, right? So this is about methane emissions. So methane is also known as CH4. Okay, so methane is a hydrocarbon that is primary component of the natural gas. Now when we talk about the natural gas, when we use natural gas, so the primary component of the natural gas is methane. And in fact, methane is also a potential greenhouse gas, because the potential of methane is several times more than the carbon dioxide. So therefore there is a highest potential for the methane to retain heat and create global warming, right? So because it is responsible for a third of warming being experienced today, and methane is also being released from the agriculture, from the dairy farming. Okay, so for example, in India itself, India is primarily dependent on agriculture sector, and agriculture is also responsible for the emission of methane into the atmosphere, since methane is contributing for third of the warming of this planet. So it is a cause of concern, right? So in fact, a majority of human driven methane emissions come from three main sectors. One is agriculture alone contributing to the 40% of the methane emissions, so particularly from the cultivation of rice and also the livestock rearing. And secondly, from the fossil fuels, crude oil, petroleum, natural gas, and coal. All these are the fossil fuels, and 35% of the methane is being released from the fossil fuels, right? So, and solid waste management and wastewater, 20%, dump sites and landfills, and proven technologies and practices could actually reduce emissions from the major sectors by approximately 30 to 40%. And apart from that, so Indian gharial, right? So remember that previously this question was asked by UPSC in its prelims examination. So the scientific name of Indian gharial that majorly found in the Chambal River of Madhya Pradesh, so its scientific name is Gavialis gangeticus. Okay, so this is its scientific name. The conservation status of Indian gharial is IUCN status. It is critically endangered species. It has been facing the threat of extinction, and it is part of Schedule 1 of the Wildlife Protection Act. That means it is being given the highest level of protection. Again, a Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species, it is also listed in Appendix 1. That means the highest protection at the international level. This is very, very important. You should remember this. And gharial generally derives its name from ghada, an Indian word for pot, because of a bulbous knob, right? So it consists of a bulbous knob present in the end of their snout. Okay, so present in the end of their snout, the bulbous knot, and because of that reason, so they are known as gharials. And only mature male have this bulbous knob, and gharials also exhibit sexual dimorphism. And if you talk about the gharial range that span from Indus River, Ganges River, Brahmaputra River, Mahanadi, Brahmani, and Baitarani River systems in India, they are also located found in Bhutan, Bangladesh, Nepal, and Pakistan in South Asia. Right, so that is the gharial range, and they exhibit sexual dimorphism, and they have this only males have this bulb, and this is the conservation status of the Indian gharial. So these things that you need to remember, right? So apart from that, currently the major population occurs in three tributaries of river Ganga, Chambal River, and Girva rivers in India, and Rapti Narayani river in Nepal. So these are they are also facing some threats such as the alteration of habitat, depletion of their prey, construction of these dams across the rivers, and increased hunting, poaching, harvesting of eggs, and even destruction of their habitats, and using their body parts for the medicinal purposes. So all these are being emerged as major threats, and that's why the population has been dwindling at a faster pace, and that's why they are categorized as critically endangered species. So Project Crocodile was started by the government in the year 1975 with the aid of United Nations Development Program and food and agricultural organizations. And gharial reserves in India are located in 3 states. They are Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, and Rajasthan. So these are the 3 states where gharial reserves are being found. Right, so that's all in this lecture, and thank you so much. So if you like our lecture, please subscribe our YouTube channel and also hit the like button. So thank you.